Good evening. My name is Pam Gardner. I'm the chairman of the Single Board, and I would like to call this session of the Single Board to order. Darren, would you like to open us in a word of prayer, please?
Welcome to everybody, both present and electronically. Glad everybody could be here. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Okay, well, after I pray, I'll go and get them. I'll get them. I'll really get them this time. Okay, let's bow for a word of prayer. Most gracious Lord, we thank you for this evening, this beautiful evening, and pray that you'll be with us and guide us in our thoughts, our conversations, our decisions and actions. We ask this in Christ's holy name. Amen.
We'll just pause for a moment while we wait for the trustees then before we proceed. Yeah. Oh, no. No, I don't do filler. I'm not a stand-up comedian. It looks, I see some, and it looks like they're entering through the back. Okay. Okay. All right. Slowly but surely, our trustees are entering through the back side door. That's okay. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Welcome to our trustees. We've already opened with a word of prayer prior to your arrival. Next order of business is Shirley.
Are there any corrections or additions to the February 28th minutes? Okay. Then I make a motion that the minutes be accepted as written.
Okay. Second. Okay. Any discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented? Say, raise your hand. Okay. All opposed? The motion is passed. The minutes are approved as presented. Okay. Next order of business is Tina with the SPRC update. You have to, okay. Since we are broadcasting or being recorded, whatever we're doing here today. Okay.
You can stay right there.
Oh.
This is real quick. We don't have much for a change. We don't have much. Right now, we're just going over and starting a review of all of our the staff descriptions, the job descriptions, updating all of those. And so we'll be doing that this month, and then I'll be getting later on with the office and getting those straightened out as much as we can. And so that's pretty much it right now. So, any questions? No, on that.
Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Tina. Okay. Next up, I don't see George for the Finance Committee report. Is someone? Oh, okay. We have a stand-in. All right. Not George. George Jr. Okay.
Well, as you can tell, I am not George, nor am I George Jr., but I'll do my best to fill in. We had a wonderful month in February. The income was really the key here. We exceeded our pledges by about $3,000. What anticipated for for the budget, and the plate came in at $20,000 in February, which is roughly $12,000 more than what we had budgeted for. That was primarily one gift, but we will accept that and thank the Lord for the graciousness of that. Our expenses were right in line with what the budget projected, so it's good news. We were ahead of the game going into March, and we have not used any of the PPP money year to date. So we still, 2 months in, have that money in reserve. So any questions? I know these are hard to see, but you can see that our income really did well in February. Steve? To my knowledge, it's ours because it was a loan that was forgiven, and so we can choose to use it when we need to use it. Therefore, that's why we are keeping it back until it's a rainy day fund for us. Anything else? Thank you. Yeah, Charlie?
Yep.
So,
You just need to say something. Charlie, if you would come up and ask your question, please. I think that,
or I can just repeat it. The question was, where are we on the audit? And unfortunately, I was not at the meeting. However, we have one audit bid that came in, and we have not had any others. I believe that we are moving forward with that audit bid that we approved in January, and are waiting for that audit team to proceed. Okay? So hopefully in the next 30 to 45 days we'll have that completed. I'm hopeful. Thank you.
all right. Okay. Next on our agenda is the pastor's report. Oh, whoops, just jumped over you. Mary Lou, trustees report. Sorry about that. Thought I forgot. I know you don't. You were going.
I don't have to do anything. The trustees just had a very exciting meeting, and we are moving forward on a number of projects with a stopgap to some of the spending. First of all, we are going to spend money on some things that have already been discussed and previously pre-approved that we made motions today to go forward with. One of them is for the children's playground. We have dismissed the idea of the canopy covers because they are so expensive. Patty Lee, are you still here? Talked to Carolyn, and can you hold up? We are ordering 2 swings with canvas covers to go on the playground for the adults to sit in when the children are on the playground. One of them is red for the adults, and the other one is a 100 Dalmatians little blue one for the kids. But they have swing covers and tops so that the kids can sit. These are going to cost a total of about $250. So we voted to have Christine order those for the playground. We have been working, Steve Stevenson has been working on getting an inventory of the filters to go to all of the air conditioning units in the church. We now have ordered and have a year's supply of filters in the garage next to the office. Twice a year, Lawhon with Brandon comes and he does replacement of filters every 6 months. We are doing monthly replacement in the office and in the parsonage. And if we could get a volunteer to do a 3-month replacement in alternating dates of when Lawhorn's guy comes and does the big church. So we've asked for a volunteer to do a 3-month interlude on the filters, but we have the filters we need, and they are in storage. The awnings out here on the west side of the church, we have been in touch with a roofing company called CCR Roofing that has done work on the church before. Steve has secured a bid and a wonderful idea and suggestion. Instead of taking the awning and recovering it or trying to put another arched oval awning, they are going to build a covered walkway that will match the covered walkway that comes off of the fellowship hall now to go out to the street. So they will leave the supports and build the covered walkway. It will tie in. It will not have rain dribbles. It will have the motion sensor lights. All of the electrical things will still be there, and it will still be a rain protection in that area. The other awning that's on the north side is just going to come down, and the pieces are going to be taken to the metal resale for salvage. The Methodist men have agreed to remove the awnings, which will save money on the replacement. The replacement cost is $4,500 once the Methodist men have the awnings down. And we were looking at it, and I said, Methodist men are going to take these down, and we're going to call 911 and have them come get them. Bill Long has been an advocate of having a balance sheet for this church that shows the assets and the debts of the church. He is working with a member of the church named Tom Bewley, who is the CPA. We expect within 90 days to have a balance sheet of assets and debts so that going forward, if anything were to happen to this building, this church, our home here, we have a value that we can reference against our insurance policies, and we know what we have and how much it costs and what's in each of the buildings. One of the things that we have been working on that has now been tabled, we voted to table all future trustee expenses as far as improvements that have not been approved until this balance sheet is approved. One of the expenses is the flooring in the youth area upstairs. That is a total of $9,000. The youth will be first on our list once the balance sheet is done. The youth rooms upstairs will be first on the list. They went up there and pulled some of the carpet back. It's glued to the floor. It needs to be replaced. It just all needs to be redone. And there's money in the trustee budget, but until we get a better handle on the balance sheet, that is going to be tabled until then, which is going to be about 3 months. So I will talk to Matt and tell him we haven't forgotten him. We just need to we just had to draw a line somewhere. The landscaping has been approved by the trustees. As soon as I get a hold of Connor and make just a couple of changes, it will be put in, and it is not to exceed $8,400. Some of the bids that we had were as high as $16,000. Connor works for Fast Track Lawn Care, which is the company that does our grass cutting, and he has been very forthcoming, very promotional. He wants to help this church look pretty. He's very excited about getting to do this work for us. So that will start as soon as we make a couple of tweaks and as soon as we can get on his calendar. It will probably take him about a week. Part of what we're doing is stage 1. Part of what we're doing is going to be a stage 2, and stage 2 is going to involve those great big huge bushes at the back of the Family Life Center and the Fellowship Hall that just are going to take a truck to pull them out. So that's going to be a big expense. He's going to trim them back, look as nice as we can. Eventually they have to come out, but not now. And the last thing I have to report is we have a very generous member of our church who has donated 2 LED, in essence, mercury vapor type lights to be installed on the points of the church here for light security. They are motion censored, and they have agreed to pay for the lights and to pay for the installation. So we approved that so that we can have security lights on the side of the church when people are here and we need lights on this church. And that's it. Does anybody have a question? We have a big meeting when we have a meeting. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Is on the landscaping, does that include going through the irrigation system and making sure it's all working properly?
Yes, he has an irrigation license as part of his company. He's, yes, it does. And the other thing that he's going to do is he's going to put PVC piping around each of the landscape heads so the rocks that we're going to install don't fall over the sprinkler heads. So he's going to be doing that. But yes, he has an irrigation license as well. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
It never occurred to me, you probably are straight out of confidence since you're in the relative business, but my great wife Charlotte said that she had heard that a lot of people that bought, say, a $100,000 home 5 years ago, insured it fully, have not updated those policies. So now that $100,000 home that they bought is worth $500,000, but if it burned to the ground, they're only going to get $100,000.
You have to have the replacement cost, right?
Are we current with that?
That's one of the things that this, where are you, Bill Long? That's one of, you want to speak to that? Come up here. But that, yes, that's one of the things that this balance sheet is going to address. And coordinate. Okay, come on.
That was one of my concerns, was the value of this church. I think I saw in some of the documentation we're about $5 million. That's a big guess. Right now, it's probably worth a great deal more, given this value of this land, the buildings, the replacement. Part of this 90 days to put the balance sheet together is an assessment of the value of each one of these assets we have, and applying an insurance to that would be a replacement versus just a stopgap. So yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we are looking at that with the insurance.
And we'll know what we got.
May I say something? So probably about 6 years ago, the trustees did quite a bit of work in this area. I happened to do the insurance, and so I recall this about contents and values. Needless to say, values have gone up significantly, but just because they have gone up does not mean insurance companies will increase your value. You have to substantiate it, and you have to substantiate it with appraisals or some sort of documentation that they will accept. It doesn't mean that our market value here is what they deem to be the replacement cost. So we have to be very diligent in our efforts to determine what our replacement cost coverage will be for our buildings. And we have to be able to substantiate that with documentation.
Do
So
you have that still? Do you have those, what y'all did 6 years ago? Do you still have
I'd
that?
have to look back in the file and see.
That would be a great starting point.
I
We didn't go into, I didn't go into this, but I asked for a lot of help, knowing that it's going to be a big effort.
Well, all I'm telling you is when they did it originally was probably 10 or 12 years ago, they actually had an appraiser come in and appraise the property. Now, that's very expensive, and that has not been done in several years. But insurance companies aren't just going to say, well, you know, things are going at $300 a square foot, so you just raise your thing at $300 a square foot, and that's the end of it. They won't accept that. I've been battling this for 2 years with prices going up. And commercial properties, which we would probably fall into that category as a commercial property kind of venue, it's very difficult to get substantiated values and to get them high enough to what you really could replace this building for. So I'm telling you that when we start pursuing this, we got to get our ducks in a row as best we can. And we may have to spend some money in order to do so.
I would hope you that, with that experience and all of it, give us a hand, if you would, please.
Well, I'll do the best I can.
Absolutely.
It's
not going to be an easy task.
We may be able to ask the insurance company to provide us with their replacement cost estimator. That's another scenario that can be very tough because they call that proprietary information and they don't want to share it because they don't want the liability of saying, well, we told you it was worth this, and then when it gets down to it, it's worth X percentage more, and then they got that liability. So it's not an easy task, and so we have a pretty I wouldn't say difficult, but we got a challenge ahead of us to determine those values.
But this needs to be.
But it does need to be done,
Thanks.
no doubt.
I'm going to ask, where's Damon? I want you to come up here, and I want you to tell everybody what you told us at the meeting about everything the trustees have done in the last, do we have time for that? It's only a little tick file. But I want you to know the different things that the trustees do to take care of some of the details, and he's the man on top of it.
Okay, it's not that there's that many of them, but when we get work orders, we try to work them off as soon as we get them, so that you can see a difference in that your church and your building stay safe. The handle on the front door of the sanctuary has been fixed by Chip and I. The eight lights in the Family Life and Fellowship Hall have been replaced. Now, you'll notice that if you go over there, 2 of them are back out again. So that tells me that the ballast is wrong, and I've got to figure out if that can be fixed, or I got to buy get the whole new unit. The exit light on the children's wing, which was burned out, has been replaced. And Chip, what was the other one? It was
Grab bar.
the grab bar in the office, in the restroom, was been installed. And the sink in the Horizon House, when we looked at it and realized, no, we're not plumbers, we're going to have to get somebody that is in there, so it's been done. Okay. And the light over there was fixed also. Okay. But for everyone here and for anyone, just if you would spread the word for us, I only have one set of eyes, and I don't see everything, and I got 2 cataracts right now that are not quite ready for surgery. So if you see something, tell us, because we may not see it. It may not happen when we're making our rounds, and especially if it's something that could be or is potentially hazardous. We don't want that. So thank you very much for your time.
I think it's important. I just think it's important that the church people know that Dane and John take really good care of this church, and we appreciate their handyman efforts. Oh, okay, here she comes.
I just want to make sure you all know that we still have the maintenance forms in the fellowship hall. So if you see something out, fill one of those out, put it in the box. Dane checks it. I think you check it. Yeah. Right. So if you see something, just fill out the form. Dane will make sure that it gets to whoever needs to fix it. But I wanted to let everybody know that those are still there for you to use. Please use them.
We're done.
Okay. Thank you, trustees. You've been hard at work. Sounds excellent. Now the pastor's report.
This past Sunday, one of our Sunday school classes passed a significant milestone. Travis and Emily Frazier started a young adult couples class. It's called Ignite. It meets in room 113 in the Family Life Center. And this past Sunday, they broke double digits. They had 10 and a half people in their Sunday school room. Travis said that they have been working towards that since they first started. The half would be J.C. Edmondson, who is just a couple of months old. So she was there with her mama and her daddy. So they were excited about that. You may have noticed as you came in the display that ties in with the Lenten season, and this has been provided primarily by Glenda Rutan and the worship committee. There are nails that are there now, and you can take one if you would like. The idea is a lot of times when we think, oh, well, they nailed him to the cross, we think about the smooth nails that we have now. This is a reproduction of the kind of nail they would have used. It's square, and they knew enough about crucifixion, they knew that if they drove it right there, the tendons in your wrist would rub across those sharp square edges to make it hurt even more. The idea is not so that you get a nail and hurt yourself, but so that you can realize a little more of the cost that Christ willingly paid on our behalf. If you just want to look at it, you don't have to take one. The great big one is the actual size of the nail that they probably used when they crucified people. A little thing like that's not going to hold somebody. So, in regard to Holy Week, we have been hard at work getting that pulled together. All the services except for the 10:30 on Sunday morning start at 6:30. So communion on Maundy Thursday will be in the Family Life Center at 6:30 p.m. Good Friday service will be here in the sanctuary at 6:30 p.m. The sunrise service, and we're asking folks to bring their chairs rather than take 100 chairs out there and set them up and then have to take them down and haul them back. Last year we asked folks to bring lawn chairs and blankets and things. They did, and that worked great. We took a few chairs in case somebody showed up and didn't know. There's some benches there, but that will be at 6:30. And then at 10:30, we have our Easter celebration. And I mentioned last week, if you are a regular attender, if you will try and park a little further away so that our visitors can park in a little closer, our first-time visitors particularly. And please help us to spot the first-time visitors. We have a little yellow bag we like to give them that's got information about the church. And we've had a lot of visitors recently. And I think that pays off when it answers a lot of the questions they might have about what we're doing here. We are going to have a practice for the people that are going to help with our Easter service at 10 o'clock on Saturday before Easter. We're going to do a quick run-through. We've got something special planned, and we want to make sure that it goes smoothly. It will be a combined service in that we're not going to follow the usual format because it's Easter. And even though we won't have confetti cannons this year, we still want it to be a big celebration. So we will have the one service. It'll start at 10:30, and it may run a little long, but we're going to have a lot more singing than we normally do. Probably drop out, probably won't have a boomer segment, probably drop out the affirmation of faith so that we can focus on celebrating that He is risen. So thank you to everybody that has been helping pull those things together, especially our worship committee. They do a lot of things. And we've got some banners that are going to be coming into the church. We haven't had banners for some time. And so those are going to be home sourced. We're not going to spend thousands of dollars and buy them from Cokesbury or some other, Concordia house. The crafters and some of the other folks in the church have handmade these. And so thank you to those who are sharing their gifts and talents with that. let's see. Many of you have heard that General Conference has been finally decided to be in 2024. And our annual conference will still take place, but that will be in June, and that will probably be the first time a lot of our people will have an opportunity to meet Bishop Sines, who is our interim bishop. And I say interim because the jurisdiction assigns the bishops, but they can't do that until General Conference meets. And since General Conference hasn't met, jurisdiction can't do the work that they need to do to assign bishops. But Bishop Lowry had already served and was ready to retire, and then served a couple of more years. And it wasn't fair to hold him and the other bishops ready to retire hostage because General Conference couldn't get its act together. So they made some arrangements and appointed some interim bishops. Now, I fully believe that when they finally get to where they can appoint the bishops officially, according to the discipline, that Bishop Sines will be appointed as our bishop. I just can't imagine that if he's been here for a year that they just yank him out and say, nope, we're going to put somebody else there. All things are possible in God's good creation, but I think that's pretty much what I have to report on the pastor's report. The other things that I need to talk about are going to spill over into old business. So unless you have any questions about anything that I've already said, we'll move on to the old business report. Last week, I believe it was, John Alleman, Barbara Bauman, and Denise Williams and I met with John Mollett, and that's M-O-L-L-E-T-T-E, not A. So you need to change the A to an O-L. And in our conversation with him, he was coming to talk with us. We had approached it. I called the district office and said, we need help putting together a survey to deal with the conflict that we have in the church about the worship style and services and times and that sort of thing, because we need to deal with that and resolve that and put that behind us. We have important work we need to do. And the district, Beverly Connolly, she said, I'm in appointment season right now, and it would be a couple of months before I could really devote time to that. Would you talk with Pat McCain, who is like the assistant district superintendent? Pat and I had a long conversation, and he said, I think this is out of my depth, but I know somebody that I think could help. They're with Texas Methodist Foundation, and Texas Methodist Foundation does a lot of this sort of resolution. They went from being simply a financial institution probably 20 years ago, and John Mollett was explaining this to us. For a while there, they were simply a building and loan kind of organization. But now they want to strengthen the congregations beyond just making sure that they're financially secure. And so they have a number of programs. He said that in situations like what we have, doing a survey tends to cause more problems, because if you do something based on the survey results, then the people who didn't get what they wanted will feel like, well, see, they'd already decided, they didn't listen to me. I'm still not being heard. He said, even though that's not going to be the case, it doesn't help. So what he suggested was a process called holy excavation. He had two options. One was the holy excavation. The other was holy conversations. He said, holy conversations, that's about a 6 to 9 month program. And I know I blanched. I think the others in the room was kind of like, we don't have that kind of time. So he said, holy excavation is a one-day conversation. And you will invite selected people to come, and he will lead the conversation. He said, line out the whole day, probably like 9 to 3. If we finish by 2, when we finish by 2. The 4 of us discussed it and decided, okay, let's go that way. And Barbara and John and Denise, correct me if I get any of this wrong. Today, I got the guidelines he was going to send us, and I forwarded those to you. I don't know if you checked your email. But the 4 of us are going to each generate a list of about 15 people based on the characteristics of people that this guideline suggests we invite. And he said one of the characteristics is you need people that the other people in the church listen to, whether they serve an elected position or not. They are some of your leaders. And so you don't want to get somebody that's there that doesn't like the church and never talks to anybody. That's why we're not throwing it open to the whole church. We'll take those 4 lists, and then the 4 of us will sit down and go through it. We don't want 100 people there, but we want more than just 7 or 8. We'd like about 30 or 40 people. If one person is on all 4 of the lists, we definitely want that person there. There may be somebody that's only on one of the lists, and it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that person. So that's how the names are going to be generated for the people that will be invited to that day of conversation. If you are not one of the persons nominated, it's not because somebody doesn't like you or you're not worthy or you didn't qualify or something like that. That's not the intent. The intent is to make sure that we have all of the voices in the church represented. That's why I'm not drawing up the list or somebody else is not drawing up the list. The 4 of us are going to do that together. And then he said, you remember in Healthy Church Initiative where you do all that work and then they would give you a list of prescriptions? And we all said, yes. He says, I'm not going to do that. I said, good. He said, though I will, based on what we learned that day, have some suggestions that I will share with you. And he said, a lot of times the suggestions that I would share in that situation are going to be similar to suggestions I've shared in similar situations. But it will be tailored to St. John's. The meeting is going to be on April 30th. In light of all of that information, and I mentioned this Sunday, we are not going to be doing a survey about the worship service times, styles, that kind of stuff. And that's why we're not going to, because of his recommendation. So that's where we are with that. Is there anything that I left out or that we need to add, that y'all want to add?
What's the timeline for this?
We're going to have the holy excavation. I don't know why they call it that. I guess because we're going to dig in deep. Will be April 30th. Yes, ma'am. Please.
I know some people were really adamant about this survey, but after talking with John, he was very insightful, and this is what he does. We've got to get back to what our church is all about. We've got to go back to what St. John's is all about and what it was like. We've got to stop the division, and we've got to get back to what God wants St. John's to be, and that's the direction we felt we should be heading, is get back and be church.
Thank you, Barbara. Please come on down.
One thing that John shared with us in the chart structure for this workshop, I don't know what else to call it, but that's basically what it is. And you're right, the explanation was an excavation that literally does go deep and gets to the core of where our problems are, and that's what we're hopefully and prayerfully getting to. But the two words that really resounded to me that he shared with us is that there's a difference between what the church perceives it to be and what the purpose of the church is. And this is what Barbara was suggesting is that we go back to identify what is the purpose of St. John's to ourselves, but as well to our community. What does the community see us to be? One of the things, I guess is one of our challenges that we have, is to try to identify where in the Bible there's a story in the Bible that may identify where St. John's is. And it may be different for Darren, different for me, or different for Pam, but nonetheless, that's kind of a challenge that we're looking at, is where is our walk in faith reflected in the Scriptures? So as we prayerfully go and get to April the 30th, we ask folks to be open and understanding and realize what the purpose of St. John's is. So
This will require a lot of prayer, not only from the people involved in that conversation, but from the congregation. And one of the questions, and John alluded to this, is we need to find out what people outside of our church say about us. And so if any of you have some particular insight on how we can go about doing that, short of going and knocking door to door, what do you think about St. John's? Usually when you do that, a lot of times people go, was he one of the disciples? No, the church. Don't know. You know the little brown church across from the big Methodist church? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So do they say we're friendly, helpful, closed? We need to find out what the community is saying about us. So if you've got some expertise in that, if you could let one of us know, because that would be very helpful information. The other item to give an update on, the night of the big storm, we had Pastor Rob Renfro come in from the Woodlands, and when I invited him, I said, would you come and talk with us about the protocol? I would like people to be informed but not scared. And he came, and we had a good attendance, depending on how close you were to the tornadoes, I guess. We had a few folks that tuned in, but the weather was just horrible. Tornadoes in Sun City and Round Rock, but we were fine here. Didn't even lose power. And it's been very interesting because we had one person that wrote in that they were appalled that somebody that was so filled with hate was allowed to speak to the church. We have had other people that thought that this was almost as good as Jesus coming back. And we had people in the middle who said, I learned things I didn't know, which was what I was wanting. Now, one of the things we learned at that time was that there was a deadline to disaffiliate of April 1st. That's the first I had heard of it. And apparently it was the first a lot of churches had heard about it. And so if a church wants to disaffiliate, and we are nowhere near that because we haven't had those conversations. That deadline has been extended to, I think, June 1st. But it seems like there is a lot of talk and pressure right now about you got to disaffiliate now, you got to do it now. If you don't do it now, that's like a high-pressure salesman at a car lot saying, if you don't buy this right now, this car's going to be gone and you're going to have to pay. No. I don't ever buy when somebody pressures me like that. So the thing to remember is this was the first step in a series of conversations. I need to get with Dane and with Tom because I'd like to bring in some people with some different viewpoints. Maybe somebody from the Free Methodist Church, maybe somebody that thinks the United Methodist Church is going in the right direction and we need to stay the course with them, and have them come in and do a similar presentation so that when we begin having our inside conversation with one another, everybody that has taken the time to learn we'll have all the information, and it's not going to be an emotional response or a fear-driven response. The big question that a lot of people asked that night was, are they going to come in and take our buildings? Are they going to kick us out and take our buildings? And the answer to that is no, unless we decide we're going to be a Baptist church, next week. And that's in the trust clause. If you decide to not be United Methodists, then your building properties and things, they revert to the annual conference. He did talk some about when you disaffiliate, what it might cost. And it's like you have to have paid your apportionments last year and be current this year. And if you have any unfunded retirement liabilities, you have to cover those. And that's all. But that's what people that have disaffiliated so far have gone through. Every church that disaffiliates, it's a different situation. So they may have a different end result with that. But we have not decided to disaffiliate. We have not really even talked about it officially. I will see if I can get some information without committing us to anything, because I think some folks are interested in that. But nobody is going to come in and tell us we can't be here unless we tell them that we are leaving. And that's what I have been that's what I have been told all through this process. That's what the protocol was all about how churches that are uncomfortable with remaining as a United Methodist congregation, how do we resolve the trust issue without having to spend thousands and millions of dollars in legal courts? That happened to the Episcopal Church. And that has happened to other denominations when they have split. The presentation is still online. So if you would like to see it and you weren't able to see it that night in person or live stream it, I would encourage you to watch it. And when Dane and Tom and I get together and get some more dates and speakers lined up, we will get that information out, because I really do want everybody to know what our options are. But do not let anybody scare you or try and pressure you into making a decision that we're not ready to make. Any questions about that? No? Okay.
Thank you, Darren. Okay. Yes. See, our only remaining item under old business is Michelle has been, as always, such a willing volunteer to handle the technology for our first live streaming of this meeting. On the evenings that she is unable to be here with us, we're still looking for a volunteer to be, we have one. Well, bravo. Thank you very much. Okay, well, check that off the to-do list. Okay, thank you very much. So I guess we will be live streaming here on out. Okay, as we learn to live with this. Okay, all right. Any new business? We do not have anything listed on the agenda. Anything that one of you fine folks wants to bring up? Okay. All right. There being no further business, our next meeting will be, hold the phone. You have some new business, sir? Okay, if you'll come on down, please, sir. Just when I thought it was safe. I was out to the car.
I was discussing with Darren, and it's come to my knowledge, and after Darren talked, gave his report, this has come to my mind. And I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and I like to do this. And I wrote it all down here, Shirley, so It'll be- It's helpful. And it has to do with the disassociation of the Methodist, from our church possibly disassociating itself from the United Methodists. And I've known Reverend Renfro that came to talk, and I spoke to his father. I was very good friends with him and his mother that were members of this church. And I've prayed a lot about this and thought about it. And I'd love to be just old St. John's, you know, no controversy. No worry about disassociation or staying or going or whatever. It's just eating at me, and I want to do something about it because I do love the church. I want to be here. So with the help of some other friends and members of the church, I've gathered together information from the Central Texas Conference, asked them what in the heck's going on. And we did receive an email that explained what we need to do if we ever want to disassociate. I'm not advocating it. Haven't even made up my own mind what I want to do yet because I don't have enough information. But in this information I'd like to give you, it's going to take a while to read all 3 pages. You okay with it? Sure. This is what I've been able to gather. If you get bored, I apologize. But it's been apparent and anticipated in the United Methodist Church could be taking a very progressive direction in theological and disciplinary changes that clearly lead us away from traditional Wesleyan beliefs. Bishop Saines has publicly stated his desire to do all he can to assist churches and clergy to move forward in whatever they have prayerfully discerned is best for them. The cabinet is in complete agreement and is actively supporting Bishop Saines. Am I saying that right? Saines? Sorry, Saines? Signs, okay, thank you. To establish an amicable and gracious process as quickly as possible. Conference leadership has been working on these procedures for the last several weeks, and an announcement on all details of the official process of disaffiliation is expected soon. While more detailed information is still to come, here's the latest and official Texas Conference disaffiliation process. All disaffiliations will be handled at the special called annual conference meeting on September 17th, 2022 at Auburn Lawn United Methodist Church in Fort Worth. Details regarding the special session of annual conference will be released following the June annual conference, June 12th through 15th at First UMC Fort Worth. The June annual conference will not address any disaffiliations. It will be moved to September. Churches already starting the disaffiliation process will not be adversely affected by the move to the September special called annual conference, including with respect to exit costs. And shift to the September special called annual conference as a result of the recent announcement of the planned launch of the Global Methodist Church in May 1st, 2022. The conference needs adequate time to properly address several issues that have arisen because of the announcement. Conference leadership also believes that some churches may need additional time to thoughtfully and prayerfully discern and discuss the issues. Churches wishing to disaffiliate at September's special annual conference must notify their district superintendent in writing or email or postal. This notification should come by June 1st, I'm sorry. The notification should come from the leadership of the church wishing to disaffiliate, admin council or equivalent. That's what I'm assuming. Notifications of disaffiliation received after June 1st may not be considered during the September meeting of the annual conference and will be addressed at the regular meeting of the annual conference in June 2023, a year from hence. Motion to study the September, I'll label all this stuff and I'm trying to go fast, so I make a few mistakes. The September special annual conference will include a time to process the disaffiliation, worship together, and bless each other as we begin to live into a new way of making disciples of Jesus Christ through our Wesleyan witness. It is therefore, I'm going to propose a motion to the single board here tonight that a steering committee be established to study the possibility that St. John may move to disaffiliate themselves from the United Methodist Church. Upon that study, the steering committee will report the findings to the single board during our April meeting. If so warranted, it is further proposed and placed in the motion that the congregation be asked to vote at a called charge conference before the June 1st deadline to enter an agreed-upon decision as to how to proceed. The study will be charged with obtaining as much objective information and pros and cons of staying with the UMC or considering the disaffiliation to possibly join Global Methodist Church or remain independent or some other option. What we do, this committee, my purpose is to get conversation going like this. And I appreciate what John and Barbara, Darren, and Denise, I'm sorry, I had a mental block. I know I've seen you so many times. Anyway, you folks have done a great job of getting that conversation started, and I like the direction it's going. But I'd like to make this motion that we get this committee talking about this, because there are a number of people, a great number of people, that would like to have that disaffiliation considered. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'd like to have an open conversation about it. And I like the fact that Darren's going to bring other folks in to give their opinions and their options that we might discover. So that's my motion, and hopefully there'll be a second and we can get this little committee started and have a good conversation.
Did you say that your motion again?
Yes, ma'am. It's all written right here. I try to do it. Is that I propose that a steering committee be established, and we can determine whether it's 5, 10, 50, how many people it need to be, to study the possibility that St. John may move to disaffiliate themselves from the United Methodist Church. Upon that study, the steering committee will report its findings to the single board during the April meeting. If so warranted, it is further proposed and placed into motion that the congregation be asked to vote at a called charge conference before the June 1st deadline to enter an agreed upon decision as to how to proceed. The study will be charged with obtaining as much objective information of the pros and cons of staying with UMC or considering disaffiliation to possibly join Global Methodist Church or remain independent or some other fashion. That's my motion, and it'll start a conversation. And if, I guess that's all I got.
I think we need to second it for, is there a second to the motion that's on the floor? Okay, so there's a second. Now we can entertain an amendment. Come on up here, okay.
The way I see this, we have three choices, really. We have the choice of disaffiliating. We have the choice of waiting until 2024 to see how all that pans out in terms of General Conference and how they decide the process will be for separating traditional churches from progressive churches. And we have also the option of just deciding to stay with United Methodist and not even entertain the other things. And my concern is that I don't want to lean into this thinking of it in terms of disaffiliation or not. I would rather see us approach it from the standpoint of let's put together pros and cons of each of the three options. And then after we've done that and we've had people come in and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each. And then at that point, I think we're in a better position to make a decision about what direction to go or whether we want to just wait and see what happens with 2024. So I'm not opposed to a steering committee, but I think the steering committee should be balanced in terms of saying, here's the pros and cons of disaffiliation, here's the pros and cons of waiting till 2024, and here's the pros and cons of making a decision that we want to stay with the United Methodist Church. And I think that balanced approach to the steering committee is a better way to go than, you know, either we would disaffiliate or we're not going to disaffiliate. So I would offer that as an amendment, just to kind of, you know, couch it in the terms of 3 options as opposed to 2, disaffiliate or not disaffiliate. Does that make sense to people? So I would just make that amendment. I don't know how you feel about that, Bill, but.
And I also think we need, as you're coming down here, bear in mind that we do already have a committee, I guess we would call it, of Dane and Tom and Bill, that's, in my understanding, doing exactly that, of what you described, Steve.
That's totally separate. The survey that.
No,
John-
that's a survey. That's something else. The survey is about our services. Okay, that's one item. This is a separate item as far as the potential split within the Methodist Church that involves Dane and Tom and Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have that group of people that are working on that topic. So in my mind, that's what they're doing, Steve.
And we can expand that to more people. We need more
I mean,
horsepower.
so, you know,
It's
that,
such an important.
I mean, now that things have kicked up a notch, perhaps, okay.
I think, and I agree with you, Steve, I think what I did in here is to have that steering committee investigate all options. And Darren made some suggestions, I think the Free Wesleyan or Free Methodist or all the different, any option that we would think would be something we'd want to hear. And let that steering committee bring that to this board to consider. This was not for that purpose. Yes, sir. I believe completely in open conversations. We never get anywhere unless we talk. If we just have our little camps and we start fighting and throwing rocks at each other, we're never going to get anywhere. If we talk about it, get on the table, that's what we need to do.
But so the motion had definite deadlines.
Yes, sir.
April 30, June 1st. I don't see how a steering committee can investigate and do their work and have all this input, report back to this board in 30 days, and then make a decision in another 30 days. So I would concur with Steve that we go down that road of investigation, but let's not put a deadline on this.
Well, these dates are arbitrary from the conference. If you're not in by the 1st of June, you got to wait another year before you can apply. What I'm saying is to put a mark. Yes, sir. But if you put a marker in, and you can always recall that. You don't have to make a decision. What we do is get the information here in whatever form it shows up in to this board. We consider it, and we got to vote. I'm not putting any arbitrary dates on there. I'm reporting what they say. And then we decide as a church and as a board where we go, the direction.
So your motion was that the committee come back here by April 30th?
Yes, have it something next, to whatever they can put together by next meeting and report here.
Just a report?
Yes, sir.
Not a recommendation?
No, sir. And if they, at that point, if you want to do something, we got that option. But right now, get that committee talking, gathering information, helping Darren bring these folks in, and do all that. Well, I'm not a wordsmith, but I'm trying. But that's my motion.
Okay, well, don't leave with that. Okay. Yeah, I think that there was some misunderstanding, because I took it that way too, that we were racing towards that deadline of yes or no. Right, right, okay. Okay, John, you had something you wanted to add? Okay.
I think as we move forward in the days to come, we should understand what options we have, all of the options, and once again, be open and honest. Some of these options we won't be able to decide overnight, within 30 days, or maybe by June the 1st. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that the door's shut. We never have the opportunity again to consider this disaffiliation, okay? It even spells out, these are the words from the conference telling us this, that any consideration beyond that June 1st will have to be considered at the following year's conference, which at current is June of 2023. I've got this email today that was forwarded to me that lists 9 different locations across the conference. They're having some informational type meetings for those who wish to consider the pros and the cons of disaffiliation or not disaffiliation. So having those opportunities for us to go, and perhaps if we use Dane and who else? Bill? Okay. Dane and Bill and Tom?
Dane and Tom and Bill.
All right.
Yeah.
To share these possibilities for them to pick a day of these that they can go and be this research team. Why are we going to duplicate the whole thing if we have this already in process? It's just a matter of charging these 3 with even more to do. Sorry, guys. But, it's up to them if, we're going to charge them to do this thing. So it's not anything that's going to be etched in stone. And like I said, the world's not going to stop tomorrow if we don't make it by June the 1st, heaven forbid. I think we have a lot of things to consider. One of the things this church needs to consider, we need to fix ourselves before we go out and try to fix others. We need to do what's right for this congregation within the current situation that we're facing before we consider the next step. So let's work to that end. Rather than trying to pile on a bunch of fixing, I think we should continue to learn as much as we can about the new process for UMC and the GMC. And then we make our decision as a church when it is time to make that decision. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John. Okay. Dane, would you like to say something since you're already on this committee? Here. This is why we wanted to sit closer to the front, yeah. Thank you.
I'm not sure what I could say other than we're gonna gather information and give it back to whoever is interested in reading it. If we can do so, and if we can get it and we can make the arrangements with folks to bring them in and listen to them, then we're going to attempt to do that also. But it all depends on its timing. We're getting on to summer. It's vacation time. I don't know, and I'm not going to drop the ball. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. But it all depends on, do you really want to hear it? And I think most of you do. So it takes some sincerity from you as well as the committee to get into this and to delve into it. And I'm willing to do some of the work. I can't do it all, but that's why we have a committee. So thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. Is Tom here? No, okay. And of course, Bill, yeah. Just thinking out, we have the motion, of course, you know, that's still pending, and we're in the, excuse me, the discussion phase. Would it be prudent to add one or more people to that committee now that this is really taking on a, okay. Is there someone here that would like to become a part of this committee? Okay, we have movement at the back of the room. Okay, Steve? Okay. Okay. Steve Stevenson. It's a PH is, okay. Okay, help me with your name, I'm sorry. So that's 5. I think that's a good amount, don't you? Because there's, needless to say, this is an incredibly important task at hand, and it may involve you spreading out and doing research in different locations. And it would seem to me that there's going to be a lot of time involved in this. This is not, and you know, bringing people in and planning and so forth. It's not going to be do it in 30 days kind of a thing at all. Yes, sir. Yeah, there's no, exactly. Right, yeah, Steve was saying how important it is that we do this right. It's, okay. 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 Okay, let me, okay. A motion, okay, steering committee be established to study the possibility, and then with the amendment to study the possibility that St. John's may move, not move, but may move, to disaffiliate themselves from the United Methodist Church. Upon that study, the steering committee will report its findings to the single board during the April meeting. I would suggest maybe we add, and subsequent meetings. I mean, because this is going to be an ongoing thing. Okay. Or maybe just leave out during the April meeting. Okay. 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 Okay, so you leave it, say, during the April meeting. Okay. If so warranted, it is further proposed and placed into a motion that the congregation be asked to vote at a called charge conference before the June 1st deadline to enter an agreed upon decision as to how to proceed. Would you be okay? Can okay. So, so if we leave. Yeah. Okay, so if we take out the if so warranted part. If so, okay. I'm going to cross that out and then we'll read it so we all. Okay. Okay. One more time. Okay, let's. Right, I mean, right. Okay, so here we go. This is what we're going to vote on, folks. It is therefore proposed and brought in a motion to the single board today that a steering committee be established to study the possibility that St. John's may move to disaffiliate themselves from the United Methodist Church. Upon that study, the steering committee will report its findings to the single board during the April meeting. The study will be charged with obtaining as much objective information of the pros and cons of staying with the UMC or considering disaffiliation to possibly join Global Methodist Church or remain independent. But we need to, but there's other considerations. Or other options. Okay. Are we good with that as far as the wording of the motion? You okay with that, Bill? Okay, and I've got it here for you. Shirley, okay. Okay, so now let's make sure we've got our, Robert's rules on. Okay. I guess we need to second that revised. What? Okay. All right. All those in favor of the much revised. Okay. All opposed? Okay. No. Surely no. We're not going to. Okay. The motion is carried. And here is what we got along my little squiggles. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Steve and Bob, for stepping up to serve on that committee as well. It's such important work. Okay. Any other new business? Okay. All right. Our next meeting will be April 25th. And following that, May 23rd and June 27th. So put those on your calendars. Sounds like we'll have a lot of information to discuss at those times. Pastor, you want to close us with a word of prayer? After he prays, our meeting will be adjourned.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you to everybody that's still here and those of you that are still tuned in. Most gracious Lord, we have an ambitious agenda in front of us in terms of gathering information and discerning what you would have us to do as the body of Christ in this location. Please inspire us. Please guide us forward. And as we leave this place, we pray that you'll help us to travel safely to our destinations, gain a good night's rest, and be refreshed and ready for the blessings you have in store for us tomorrow. We ask these things in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.